Hi, Premier. Good to have you here in studio.
Hi, Vashti. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you making the time. I know that you met with a number of federal ministers today, and I actually wanted to start off on essentially the relationship between your province and the federal government, particularly where these major projects are concerned, because that first list has come out. Obviously, nothing from New Brunswick specifically on the list, not even on those kind of 5 like maybes below. Why is that?
Well, I think we have to raise the awareness of the team here in Ottawa about the projects and the opportunities that we offer to them in New Brunswick. And really, it's about retooling how we shape the projects, because some of them are really ready to go almost on their own, and figuring out how they fit into a major projects office structure or a trade corridors fund structure or a Build Canada Homes structure. That's what we're doing, is taking our opportunity and fitting it into the landscape that the federal government has put in front of us.
So was the pitch the problem?
I think a piece of it. You know, we have some projects that don't need a ton of acceleration of regulatory approval, and that's the main tool that the Major Projects Office is offering. And so demonstrating to them how our projects fit the criteria that is evolving. You know, we're learning as we look at these projects what they're actually going for. Are they looking for speed? Are they looking for achievability? What kind of private sector proponent and commitment is in the project, and making sure they have all the answers to those questions.
Did you not feel like you had that information in advance, like out of the, for example, the First Minister's meeting? It seemed pretty explicit from the federal government that they were looking for things that were almost there, but not quite. Was that not clear to you?
I think it's been evolving, because if you look at the list of projects, you'll see in the first 5 some that are pretty much done deals. And then if you look at the next list, you'll see some that are real long shots. So trying to navigate when we're talking port projects and mineral projects. And
I mean, the first 5 were not long shots at all.
No, I mean, Darlington's done. I'm not quite sure what role the federal government is going to play in advancing that project. And so it's really trying to read from different ministers who have different perspectives. What are the goalposts? And more importantly, to tell them about what New Brunswick has to offer, because we are here to unlock an opportunity to export LNG to Europe. We're here to deliver a critical mineral for our defense interests in a way that positions us geopolitically the way that we need it to. We've got a port that has capacity and is delivering resources to the West, and so it is a critical piece of economic infrastructure that we want to link in to the growth plans that the nation has. And so it's just making sure that there's consistent awareness of the fact that we're ready to go. We have partners at the table, and we have some projects that could benefit from being designated that are going to help New Brunswick, and it's going to help Canada.
Can I ask you to drill down just on when you mentioned LNG, because of course for years now it's been politically contentious to talk about shipping LNG to Europe. We interviewed the Speaker of the European Parliament here a few weeks ago, who was unequivocal. There is a market in Europe, she said, even at a higher price for Canadian LNG. Are there discussions that New Brunswick is involved in about being kind of the point of export, for example, for that product? And where would you tell Canadians those discussions are if they're happening?
That is exactly the discussion. If we want to compete in the European natural gas market, we've got to move fast. And so we don't have time to build a ton of new infrastructure. We have an existing LNG terminal in St. John that is ready to be used in the next few years to unlock our ability to sell natural gas to Europe. And so there's no other terminal that is in that position that is pointing east. So we just need about 600 kilometers of pipe to connect to that LNG terminal. Well, look at some of the previously proposed pipeline projects and the amount of kilometers, and also the nature of those kilometers, and whether they're going through tundra or whether they're going through really inaccessible land. This is a short piece of pipeline to attach to existing infrastructure that some of my neighbors want to see expanded, in order to unlock our ability to maybe squeeze out the US, squeeze out Russia, and deliver to Europe the natural gas that they need, that really improves Canada's economic and energy security and independence.
So you're a Liberal. The previous Prime Minister was a Liberal. He argued there was not a business case for that. Do you think there's a business case for it?
Oh, I think things have shifted. I think if you look at the relationships that Europe is interested in building and who they want to buy their energy and fuels from, they're a lot more wary about Russian sources. And right now, they're even wary about American sources of fuel because of the way that relationship's been going. So new developments in the Gulf Coast the ghost. New developments in the Gulf Coast, as well as other parts of the world, aren't as attractive as a stable democracy that Canada has to offer. Europe as a reliable place to get that supply. Who is going to provide that resource to the fullest extent of environmental scrutiny and managing human rights and doing it safely and fairly?
Europe was already worried, though, about Russia when Prime Minister Trudeau said, and already trying to wean itself off, I should be clear, Russian gas, when the Prime Minister said that there wasn't a business case. Has it really evolved that much? And are you sure, can you tell New Brunswickers that there is a business case, that whatever investments are made on the part of the province will be recouped on a return?
Well, that's the conversation that we're having at the table right now with a number of private sector proponents, right? We have pipeline providers, we have infrastructure owners, we have a lot of people interested in looking at the marketplace today, the competitive factors, looking at the assets and the infrastructure that we have and the ability to create that new market for Western gas and get this critical piece of infrastructure built in the eastern part of the country.
A lot of this is, of course, a discussion that's happening, as you mentioned, with against the backdrop of what's happening with the United States. New Brunswick is the most exposed province to the relationship with the U.S. I note that as of your recent fiscal projections, the deficit has increased by $120 million versus what was projected in the March budget. How much worse are these tariffs going to make that, and what are you prepared to do as a result?
Well, we went through this with our first budget, right? We were sworn in November 2nd. The president came into power shortly thereafter, immediately threatened tariffs, and we watched our economic projections tank because the investment climate was too uncertain and people froze projects to hire or invest in new capacity, and it hasn't gotten prettier since then because we've seen some of the customer relationships that we have with the U.S. be challenged, the additional burden of the steel and aluminum tariffs, now the increased softwood lumber tariffs. They're hammering New Brunswick's economy, and so we had put together a $150 million fund to support companies impacted by tariffs this past spring in February and March to help them deal with that threat. And now we're looking at projections that are even more serious at a time when we want to make sure that economic activity in New Brunswick is there to produce the kind of good-paying jobs that New Brunswickers need in order to pay their ever-rising bills. It's a really tough circle to square, and we need to balance our ability to be fiscally responsible, to manage our debt as responsibly as we can, while investing in the kind of conditions that are going to deliver the jobs for New Brunswickers and manage the costs of living that they're facing right now.
To be clear, though, like part of the increase in the projection for the deficit, the size of the deficit, is because of increased spending and obviously lower revenues. If those revenues continue to be depleted by the situation, through the situation, at least, you know, in part with the United States, are you going to cut spending more? Are you going to increase taxes? Or are you going to tell New Brunswickers to live with a bigger deficit and no promise of balancing the budget, which is what you did promise to do during the election?
Yeah, we have looked at a lot of different ways to make this work, and we're actually undergoing a bit of an activity right now in government. It's the work of civil servants to find new ways to deliver a program, right? Do we need to be doing that work? Do we need to be doing it now? Do we need to be doing it this way? We started that a year ago. Finding those savings within the first 12 months while you're trying to execute the transformation is challenging, but that's inside baseball. What New Brunswickers want is to know that they can have affordable power, they want to have an affordable place to live. So we're doing property tax reform right now, we're doing a comprehensive review of our energy utility, we're looking at the things that will help deliver affordability for New Brunswickers, and then inside we're making sure that we're investing in their #1 priority, which is the healthcare system. We've got to make sure that New Brunswickers have access to health care, and those investments in primary care will actually save us money in tertiary care and acute care, the most expensive form of care, right? If you can move somebody from getting their senior or long-term care in the hospital into a home care environment, there's a significant cost savings there, and that's a process and a labor challenge. So there's a whole bunch of areas where I think we could deliver better services to New Brunswickers at lower cost, while we make sure that our economic engine has the fuel that it needs to deliver the revenues both to New Brunswickers and to our province.
I guess and I take your point on all of that, and I understand that those kinds of endeavors, they don't turn around results overnight. They certainly haven't over the last year. So my question again, are you prepared to further cut spending in a meaningful way to address a ballooning deficit? Will you raise taxes, or will you tell New Brunswickers to just live with a bigger deficit than you promised?
Yeah, well, we've already asked them to live with a bigger deficit than we promised, right? The expectation coming into the last election was an economic trajectory that looks very different than the one that we're on now. So we have delivered a deficit in our first budget and projections for deficits in the next 3 years, because to meet that promise, we would have to break every other promise that we've made. And New Brunswickers are expecting us to help them look after their debt and their deficits, as well as balancing our own. We don't have an eye on new taxes right now. We think there are ways that we can find savings in the civil service and invest in transforming how we deliver those services. So closer to the customer, engaging our partners in the nonprofit and the municipal sectors to do things differently, thinking about how we deploy technology better so that we can reach those beautiful far corners of New Brunswick where people want to live in peace in the woods close to the water without all of the noise of an urban center, and give them the services they need in a different way, so we can save money and we can still manage our deficit responsibly while improving services affordably to New Brunswickers.
I'm going to leave it on that note. I've run out of time, but thank you very much, Premier, for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.